While we see once again a gradual decline, we've also seen gradual rises in income levels across Australia, and this rate, buy now or wait. Australian home values are firmly in the downswing phase of the property cycle. CoreLogic data shows that national values are down 2% since a peak in April, or an equivalent of a decline of $15,000 in the median value of dwellings. At a national level, the pace of decline in values is at the fastest observed since the global financial crisis. Lower home values may seem like good news to potential home buyers. As housing values decline, some affordability metrics will begin to show improvement. In the combined capital city markets, time to save a 20% deposit fell for the first time in almost 2 years, albeit marginally in the June quarter. However, mortgage costs are rising, rents are rising, household budgets are being stretched, and the cash rate has yet to quell the supply and demand pressures behind the cost of living increases, leaving households to bear rising cost pressures on several fronts. The ANZ CoreLogic Housing Affordability Report is a guide to the main trends and drivers of housing affordability across Australia. The August report shows a bit of an improvement in affordability due to the decline in home values recently. The report analyses housing affordability on 4 main metrics. The first is years required to save a deposit. The second is the ratio of dwelling values to household incomes. The third is a proportion of income required to service a new mortgage. And the fourth is a proportion of income required to service rent. Let's take a look at each metric a little bit closer. The years required to save a 20% deposit fell for the first time in 2 years with June quarter's data, although the decline was marginal. The time taken to save a deposit for the average house on average income has decreased to 11.11 years, down from 11.14 years, a decline of about 11 days. The more expensive capital cities have shown a decline in dwelling values since September 2020. The time required to save a deposit reduced by 3 months for Sydney and Melbourne this June. There was a subtle decrease observed for Canberra and Hobart, where the time required to save a deposit decreased by a month. 21 years ago, it only took approximately 6 years to save that 20% deposit, and we can see how times have changed. Over that 21-year period, we're up nearly double the time, hitting in around that 11-year mark now to save the same deposit for the same home. So we can see that unaffordability piece, how that's really changed over the years. If you find these videos helpful, do me a little favor and hit that subscribe button down below. Taking a look at the greatest reduction in years to save a 20% deposit, we can see Sydney topping the list, Manly in particular, that's gone down by 2.5 years. We can see in Queensland, Noosa coming down quite a large amount. Indooroopilly, in Melbourne, we've seen Monash. So we can see a bunch of suburbs and areas that have come down, and the years to take to save a 20% deposit is falling away as we see price values decline. Taking a look at the second metric, we see the dwelling value to household income ratio has actually declined. So across combined capital cities, there's been a slight improvement to affordability. This fell from a record high of 8.4 in March 2022 down to 8.3 in June. While we see once again a gradual decline, we've also seen gradual rises in income levels across Australia, and this ratio is expected to improve during the housing market downswing despite the challenge of rising interest rates. Looking at the dwelling value to household income ratio, we can see how much it rose in the last 12 months when we saw that crazy increases in property values, where we saw Sydney, Melbourne, even Brisbane increasing by 20+%. The third metric was the portion of income required to service a new mortgage. The portion of income required to service a new mortgage increased from 40.4% in March to 44% in June, the highest portion since June 2021. Moreover, the portion of income needed for rental payments on new households has increased from 30.3% in the previous quarter to 30.9%. Mortgage costs as well as rents increase, which ultimately tightens households' budgets. Mortgage serviceability decreased the most, where property values continue to rise in the June quarter. In Adelaide, the portion of income needed to service a mortgage jumped to 42.6% in June, up from 37.4% in March. Similarly, in Brisbane, where it increased by 4.5%. And looking at the numbers here, we can see the portion of income required to service a new mortgage and how that's correlated over time. We can also see how much higher mortgage repayments now if you bought in July 2022 than January. And we can see even as property values have decreased, so looking at the principal versus the deposit you'd put down in January 2022 to July 2022, we can see how much of a difference those repayments have made with all the RBA rate increases. And the last metric is the portion of income required to service rent. The percentage of median household income required to pay rent on a new lease in June is up to 30.9% from 30.3% in the previous quarter. We've seen higher domestic demand and low supply of rentals cause a shortage. We've also seen the Greens table some changes which could potentially affect investors, where rental rises could be frozen for 2 years. Looking across the country, it's not all bad news. We can see the percentage of income required to service rent has actually gone down in Melbourne. We can see Sydney fairly stable, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, all up, Hobart slightly up, Darwin up as well. If you're thinking of buying in a housing downswing, here at Hunter Galloway, we can help. We're mortgage brokers based in Brisbane, deal with people Australia-wide. If you're looking for a great mortgage broker, we'd love to help. Hit us up at huntergalloway.com.au, fill in our contact form, we'll give you a call, have a chat, or call us directly on 1300 088 065, and we'll see you next time.